Good evening. My name is Kyla Hanington, and I'm the Public Engagement and Outreach Division Manager with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights. This month, the elephant we don't see diversity dialogue between our office and the Prince George's County Memorial Library System celebrates Hispanic Heritage Month as we discuss the anthology Wild Tongues Can't Be Tamed, described by its publisher as a collection in which best-selling and award-winning authors, as well as up-and-coming voices, interrogate the different myths and stereotypes about the Latinx diaspora. National Hispanic Heritage Month, which runs each year from September 15th to October 15th, celebrates the histories, cultures, and contributions of people who live in the United States, whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. These dates were chosen because they're significant for a lot of those areas. September 15th is the anniversary of independence for Latin American countries Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And in addition, Mexico and Chile celebrate their independence days on September 16th and September 18th, respectively. So for those of you who weren't with us last month, and you may be wondering, our diversity dialogue does look a little bit different than it has over the last 2 years. Over the summer, Michelle Hamill, who co-hosted this with me for all this time, left the library system for a wonderful opportunity. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge again her absolutely tremendous contribution to this program, as well as to so much of Prince George's County. So Michelle, I still really miss you. And tonight, as co-host, we welcome special guests. So first from the library system, we have John Williams. John is an adult services librarian at the Bowie branch of the library system. And from my office, the Office of Human Rights, we welcome back Renee Ballabrooks, who's the executive director, and Jose Villegas, who's the assistant director and manager of the investigation division. So thank you so much for joining me again. Both of you were here last month, and I'm so grateful for all three of you for being here tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Kyla. It's wonderful to be back. This book, Wild Tongues Can't Be Tamed, is an amazing compilation of 15 voices, and it really provides insight and some really good thought-provoking stories. I encourage everyone to either check it out from the library or purchase it yourself. So I guess I'll start with a question. Like the very first essay by Mark Oshiro, like you can't always tell by the name exactly, right? And that's part of what. So, what did you guys think about that first essay? And was it anything about it surprising or took you by surprise?
Well, if I may. Just a little bit about the whole book. I thought and then I'll get to the question. I thought that the book was very interesting to me because it's just give different perspective, 15 different people and how they experience it, even though they're part of the Latino culture, how they were struggling to identify with the culture, or with the other people were actually identifying them as Latinos. So it was kind of interesting just to see. And one of the things that I kind of noticed was that it was like this kind of a struggle of identification of the Afro-Latino and what Latino is, and the other Latinos in the Caribbean and from other places. So it was very, very interesting book and the reads of every other, from the authors. But dealing with the first article, I thought, I think you and I mentioned earlier, talk about these earlier, is that I didn't even know what the word poncho meant. So I guess one of the things as you hear is the poncho. Some people say it's if it's raining you just cover, right? What you use for that when. And I heard that. I knew that, but I didn't really know what poncho meant until I went to a reliable source. I just went to Google, right? I didn't look at a dictionary, but I just went to Google and to look what the definition of poncho was. And so, in how Poncho, especially in the Mexican culture, is the denial of, of not accepting of your culture, right? Or in a way, the denial of your culture. Um, and it was interesting to me that Mark Oshido, which is, I think, from the Mexican descent, but was adopted by a Japanese father that was born in Hawaii, I think, and the mom was white.
Yeah.
Okay.
He described her as a blonde, blue-eyed, white American
Yes,
woman
and
from
so that's kind
Colorado
of,
or somewhere. Yeah.
and not just that, but that how also his personal struggle identifying the way that how he identified himself, right?
Yeah.
Because I think at some point he mentioned when he was 15 or something like that, when he had a girlfriend, she ended with him the relationship, and she was telling people that okay, she ended the relationship because he was gay. So it was interesting just kind of to read the article, because there's things that you or me as a Latino would think, I know this, I know that, but not really actually know my own culture.
Yeah. It speaks to like the use of idioms, right? So you can understand a language, but not understand really a particular nuance. And I missed that. You and I talked about this, and I thought it was saying, I am 9 or I am 8 or whatever as he was saying it. And so I missed sort of the essence, but yeah, but it was so well done. Just sort of how some of us deny culture, how some of us, and in this scenario, he wasn't denying his culture, but he was running towards it, trying to understand who he was. And the rejection that he felt. But anyway, yeah, what did, yeah.
I felt like that it, and I saw this in other stories in the collection, which was, or essays in the collection, which was this combination of, first of all, and one of the things I love about this, I'll just say this, is that we did an event with the library system a while ago, actually one of our voting events, which was talking about how Latinos are not a monolithic voting bloc. And the fact that we felt that we needed to do that event gives you a sign that there was a reason why we had experienced or believed that people might think that. And I feel like in a lot of ways, this collection is more of that. It's like there's not a monolith. There isn't one voice. There isn't one experience. And one of the things that but there were themes that resonated. And in this first essay where I saw a couple themes that I think repeated throughout the collection was, for this writer, like he couldn't win, right? Like he wasn't accepted in dominant white culture. He wasn't accepted. And that's like the kind of slur, the derogatory expression that Jose, you talked about, that you weren't, he wasn't Mexican enough, or he was too American. And so depending on which section, which group of people he was interacting with, he kept being told that he didn't fit and he didn't belong. And not the whole way through, but that was this. And I felt that there was echoes of this throughout, this idea that you could never really fit, that you were, that there is judged and found wanting over and over again.
No, that was true, because I think throughout those essays, throughout the 15 essay, that I can't. One of the main point was just that the struggle of acceptance. Sometimes was with the different culture, but sometimes a lot was within their culture, right? Within Latino culture, and then there was another layer after that with the Cuban culture. Whether so it's not just the main culture of Latino, but then another layer, whether you Cuban or not Cuban, or whether you Cuban but you don't speak like Cuban. I think that was one of the essays that dealt with that too. Is that different layers of conflict or acceptance within this group, or within this kind of as a collection of essays.
Yeah, I was struck by, and I'm sorry, John, because
Yes.
it's
Oh,
like
that's fine.
dinner growing up with we were four kids. If you didn't
Okay.
talk, if you didn't jump in, anyway, just briefly to echo that, I was struck by how, as humans, people have to fit into nice, tidy boxes, and that was sort of the theme. And so, if you don't look like you are of Hispanic heritage or Latin heritage, then you can't, this whole idea, and Kyla and I have talked about this before, like, why do you have to prove that you deserve a seat at the table? Why do you have to prove that you're Black enough, or that you're Latin enough, or that you're gay enough, or whatever it is, right? And this whole idea of how we judge each other. And if you don't fit into that box, then you're either discarded or you have to prove that you deserve membership and whatever, right? But anyway, go ahead, John.
I definitely agree. One of the things that runs through this whole series of essays is the strength that the author draws from that nonconformism. For instance, in the first essay, the author talks about, yes, how he was ostracized, but he draws strength from that. There was also, for instance, in the theater piece that one of the authors was talking about, she was saying that she drew strength from the fact that she was, quote, an outsider. So to me, one of the things that resonates through this book is the fact that you can draw strength from being an outsider, even though it may lend you, even though you may get derided by your culture or by your family, but you can derive strength from that, even though sometimes it leaves you in dangerous situations.
Yeah, one thing that struck me, John, when you say draw strength, that first essay from Mark Oshiro, the very last, when he's at his book signing, and it brought tears to my eyes. I'll just read the last little bit. Let's see. Someone is going to hand a book you wrote to a young Latino boy, one who has never read a book from cover to cover in his entire life. He will approach you at an event, and his friends will be clowning on him as he tries to speak. And he will tell you that your book is the first he ever read. And then he will say, I didn't know we got to write. And when the tears fill your eyes, this is Mark talking really about himself, when a young man approached him, you will know exactly what he means, because you didn't know either. But now you do. Let that breathe out. Breathe it back in. Are you ready? It's time to keep doing the work. So I just thought, yeah, it's poignant. And you're right. The strength from all of that, and how it affects everybody.
I was struck something you said, Renee, and I think I think it's the second essay, which is the price of admission. So this is somebody talking about their family, but it's also talking about one of their relatives who had a lot of issues, and also was a family member and loved and caring and important. And so it ended with this. The essay ends with, what I'm certain is this: you don't have to be perfect to deserve a good life. You don't have to be good to be missed. And for me, that was so powerful, and connected with something we were saying too about, like, where is that our existence is valid. We are valid because we exist. And to read again this collection of a repeated theme, and it's not only dislocation. I do want to be clear about that there's also a lot of joyfulness and connection. It's not, I don't want to say that it's all one note by any means, but there is this theme of having to fight and elbow in for space. And I think this idea that you matter just because you exist. And what are we doing? I mean, that's another question maybe for another time, but what are we doing that over and over and over again, we are raising people in our communities and in our neighborhoods and even in our families where it's not the message that they're getting.
Yeah, this was a beautiful story, the second one about, yeah. But it's so relevant when it talks about sort of the splitting of families, right? Deported back after years and years in New York, deported to Colombia, where not one relative with mental health issues as an adult, as a father, as a grandfather. Yeah, poignant. But yeah, isn't that funny, Kyla? I actually tagged that same sentence because it
Oh, that got me right here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I'm willing to put myself on the line a little bit
Okay.
because that's what we do here at the Diversity Dialogue. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't do it. So there's an essay in here that actually Renee specifically pointed out to me, which is one called "Invisible," and it's a woman who's talking about marrying into a white family, and specifically, a particular type of family that a certain religious perspective and certain cultural perspective, and her experience with a lot of microaggressions that including conflict avoidance. So anybody who knows me well, and so this wow, I was like, this is really personal. Okay, so and seeing how this cultural, like these deeply embedded cultural things, like not only like I'm also Canadian, like we'll talk, oh, that's a whole thing to unpack, but how that this maybe kind of shifting this other people can experience it in such a negative or hostile or manipulative way. And just I will say this, I would be lying if I did not say that in that essay I saw things that I had done, that I have been around people that do, and that I fear I could do again, truthfully. And so that is one of those things for people watching, is that I think that no matter who you are, there's probably an opportunity. Sometimes a lot of what we talk about is ways where you can see yourself positively reflected. And we all need that. We all need ways where we can see ourselves positively reflected. But I also think that sometimes we have opportunities to see ourselves negatively reflected, and to just try to, first of all, be gentle, but also be like, how can I do better going forward? Like some of the things that the family was saying, like, oh, just being nice or whatever, just being thoughtful, stop being such a jerk. And I'm like, wow, are you quoting me right now? Like, I just think that that's something that I'm familiar with, that feeling, and things that maybe I thought were unique to me, I'm seeing how much I embody a certain culture too.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So Invisible, it starts on 193. And yeah, I love the way she sort of. So for those who haven't read it, and I hope you do get this book, not to give it all away, but yes, she marries into a family that conflict is swept under the rug, and it's disguised in. She gives one example of, you see the anger briefly, and then it's masked, and then it's pushed away, and you pass the salt, right? And how in her culture, anger is righteous, and you don't avoid conflict. You lay it all out, you clear the air, and you move on. And so dealing with her in-laws, who were what I would call sort of passive aggressive and manipulative in their conflict avoidance or in their silence with their kids. And so one of their sons married the author. And there were so many things that just struck. And I'll read one of them. Let's see. So she's talking about her mother-in-law. It was also possible that when she said, "We don't see color," what she meant was, "We don't see, period. I didn't know back then, but I know now. This is how the worst of whiteness works. Insults are tied up in acts of kindness. Judgments are laced under cover of benevolence. No harm done is ever done on purpose. There is an excuse for everything. It's deep. She was saying, but unawareness, this is another thing, is not the same as refusing to see. There is plenty of harm in looking in a person's direction and blurring your eyes until you see what you want to see, or until you see nothing at all. Oh my goodness, there were so many gems. Yeah, go ahead, Jose.
That essay was it's I guess was an interesting read because yes, so like what you read earlier, what you said earlier is that yes, I guess in her family, they were able to kind of have that communication, and so if they had a conflict, you'll be able to kind of discuss it, get it over, and that. But one of the things that you notice in that too is that it's that I guess they were so accustomed, the children so were accustomed of not even bringing it up, bringing any issue up, that when she was a victim of this microaggression, I guess, from the parents, and she spoke with the in-laws or her husband's siblings, they kind of knew, they knew what was going on, but it was just that because they're being accustomed not to say anything, they were not even open to address it with the parents, right?
Right.
But it's interesting too that you see, I mean, those dynamic you can also see with certain cultures in the Latino community, because I guess depending on her, how the family is, because I would say that I guess my parents would see this. It's I wouldn't bring anything to them. I mean, if like so it's the discussion of if there was a conflict. I think I was similar to the kids, their kids. That's you keep it to yourself, and so you wouldn't bring it up. So I guess it's also depend on how the dynamic of the family, whether you feel that openness to have the back and forth conversations or you don't. I mean, so I mean in that regard of the family dynamic, but it was very, very interesting essay.
And I do want to say that. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I've got the coughs a little bit. The part about the family dynamic, that one of the things that struck me about this was that I also come from a particular type of family, and I have met people, including white people from Canada, who have a completely different, there's many different conflict styles, and I have met all of those different conflict styles in people who look like me, who come from the same place. And so I will say that I have heard, like, I have a friend who's she's a white woman, and she's originally from Minnesota, and she made a comment about like conflict avoidant Minnesotas, and I was like, I don't think that that's like a Minnesota thing. I think that's like a family thing, and I really felt like that as somebody who has a particular conflict style. And I agree with Jose. There's reasons that came, there was reasons why I am the way that I am, right? But that's maybe why the essay kind of struck me. And I am, for those of you watching at home who haven't heard me say this 50 times, I always mention it. Every show, I have to tell you how old I am. Everybody, I'm 48, turning 49, November 23rd. Cards are accepted at the Office of Human Rights. And so the point is, like, I'm not young, right? Like, I'm almost 50 years old. And so to read this, and I do this work. I've been doing this diversity dialogue for 2.5 years. I've been with the Office of Human Rights for 6 years. My point is, I should know better, right? And I read this essay, and I was like, she is making cultural comments about things that resonate for me, that I see in myself, that I see with people that I know, and that before reading this, I probably would have told you it wasn't cultural, that it was, I wouldn't have denied it, but I would have told you that it was in my family. And so this is, I think, and Jose, your point is right. Where does culture, when is it cultural and when is it family? Like, how do you tease that out?
Yeah. And she talked about sort of the privilege. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
I'm not sure you can actually tease it out. I think that's what made it so eloquent, because she was saying that a lot of these essays, but particularly this one, talks about how powerful silence is, and how a dominant culture uses silence to squelch dissent, and to make the other person feel smaller and more inferior. For instance, it wasn't until she confronted Jeremiah's father, Jeremiah being her husband, and he had a nerve to show a book on eugenics. And she said, well, explain to me what eugenics is. He said, well, I know what it is. He said, well, explain it to me. And so that's what started the whole verbal violent confrontation, because he was forced to look at his own ugliness, and the ugliness of the idea of eugenics, which before was just, when it was couched in polite terms and polite language and polite activity, you can gloss over that. She didn't have the well, she didn't have, not the ability, but she didn't have the opportunity or the advantage to do that. And one of the things I was thinking when I read the essay was, is calmness a privilege? When you're not part of a dominant culture, is calmness a privilege? And can you afford to be acquiescent to a society that is oppressing you? And my opinion would be no. But the other question would be, well, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with it politically? How do you deal with it socially? How do you deal with it in a family setting? And so the fact that she decides that she doesn't want to have anything to do with her in-laws anymore, the essay ends on an unresolved conflict. But in my opinion, that's what makes it more powerful, because you can't neatly tie up these ideas.
That's such a great point, John. In there, she talked about, and I'll find it because I marked it. She talks about exactly what you were saying, but kind of, let me find it here. Okay, yeah. The United States of America was then and is now living through a time that makes whiteness visible, even to those who lived their whole lives willingly ignoring what it entails. And this is talking around sort of the elections and the denier of election, but more importantly, sort of the racism that came to the forefront is really what she's addressing. And so she says here, so those who've lived their whole lives willingly ignoring what it entails. As the months passed, I pondered the question, what is there to forgive? Would you join a family peripherally by marriage? What if, when you join a family peripherally by marriage, what if anything is owed to you? What do you owe back? And I thought, wow, it kind of resonates personally. Mm-hmm. So then she goes on, when the Charlottesville White Nationalist March occurred in the summer of 2017, and a white supremacist terrorist drove into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing one person and injuring 18 others, Jim, her father-in-law, said, but there was violence on both sides. I was owed, in the least, never hearing a comment like that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then she goes on, and it was so... Yeah, I like how you said, John, sort of the privilege of comment, right? And one other thing I found, again, she's talking about her in-laws. I wish they could understand what I know. Willful ignorance is violent. I thought, wow, that is incredibly deep, and it is true. I mean, I know people who can excuse the inexcusable, even when confronted with the fundamental reason why this is not about beliefs or politics, it's about fundamental humanity. So willful ignorance is violent.
Agreed.
Wow.
Yeah, that was, I think there was a portion of that in the article when she kind of, I think after some incident that happened, she was talking to Jeremiah and the sibling, and his siblings, and she was the one kind of tried to open their eyes, calling, well, your parents are racist. I think that's what she said, and even the siblings and Jeremiah was, oh no, they kind of deny it, but they just ignorant. And so go with what you were discussing and what she said, that they were choosing to be, they were trying, it's like finding excuses not to accept or to actually, yeah, to accept what they were really were doing with her, right, or what they were expressing to the community. It's just even the kids were just providing excuses for the parents.
That's right. But the epiphany happened, right? They came around after like a not, a passage of time, and they ended up saying, oh my goodness, our parents are racist. Yeah,
But,
it was,
but when was that though? I think in that accepting came when they actually figured out that they voted for a presidential candidate, right?
right.
Not,
And the some of the speech at another holiday gathering at the house, right, looking at each other and like, oh my goodness, what she said 2 years before or 3 is actually true. Like the blinders are off. And the part
yeah.
about asking her, like your in-laws who you've known for 11 years or more, asking, are you illegal?
Right. She
Yeah.
said, and I've traveled with them. They've seen my passport.
Right.
And to be clear, I'm so sorry about all the coffee and everybody. The whether or not you travel with them as in your passport, it's and like I have people. Okay, people ask me if I'm illegal and if I have papers before I became a citizen. But it was obviously always done, and it was always done by white people, and it was always done like it was the very funny, right? Like with a little bit of an elbow in the ribs. And if you unpack that, it's because the presumption, of course, is that I'm not illegal. That's the joke. So based on what? Why are they presuming anything about my, like, if we are so willing to presume something about somebody else's immigration status just because I look like this and I talk like this, that's got nothing to do with my immigration status. But I have been on that what she experienced was like not a joke. I have experienced the joke about that, and again, what makes it why?
And I have witnessed the real question, not a joke of somebody being asked, another Latino being asked, "Are you citizen?" So so it's so things happen.
It does. And I just want to read one little thing, kind of her resolution of all of this, right? So she broke up with her in-laws after 11 years. And they sent her a gift after a year after she broke up with them. Because she said, I don't want this relationship. I don't want this relationship with you. I don't want to be in a relationship with you. Thank you for raising your son, but we're good, right? So after a year of silence and their injured pride and, they're the victims, then they send her a gift. So then this is her thinking. What do we owe each other? I know that I do not owe them my inner peace. I do not owe them purity, vulnerability, heat, or the sum of my life that I built up around me in a frenzy so it can spill over in abundance to all my beloveds. I get to choose who I love and who I extend my vulnerability toward. I think that I owed Susan and Jim my attention and understanding, which I gave and which they have. I am not even angry anymore. But this does not mean they belong in my life. I wish them well. I hope that someday they are able to confront the harms they've done and keep from doing more. I hope they become better people. I don't need to be part of their path to redemption. Now, what I want to be, what I had always been to them, invisible. It was so, yeah, this one is good. Please get the book, borrow the book from the library, read it, read Invisible. It's the third to last of the 15. There's so many gems in there, nuggets. But anyway, what else do you guys think about that one or another story?
No, I just wanted to say that I mean, just in the dealing with the collection of the stories, some things that kind of brought back some memory was like, you know, you can see the different culture from different countries and the conflict, assimilation to the country or acceptance, and so I know that like even me, I've been asked. Whether I'm from the Caribbean, right? You know, someplace in the country in the Caribbean. So, you know, this is just from another Latinos just asking, you know, we still have this, I guess, segregation or separation of people from different culture, even though we are all Latinos, and, you know, that we speak same language, well, with differences in each country, but I mean, it's overall the Spanish language. You know, I know I've been asked in the past whether I was from Puerto Rico, or whether I was from Dominican Republic, because when I say, I'm from, I'm Salvadorian, people don't just, they oh, you don't look like you're from El Salvador. You know, it's like, you know, people have, and this is other Latino, I guess, you know, you still have like, are you supposed to look certain way for certain countries, until that kind of the things that I got is, especially with the different essays in terms of how people in New York, you know, the Cubans, the Hondurans, and all of that. So that reminded me of my many questions of whether I was from Dominican Republic or in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So I
It's
thought,
that box again, right? We try to put each other in boxes, and whether it's for a pecking order or just as you said, like, I thought the Cuban imposter syndrome, that essay really talked about that. That's the page 135, right? She's a Georgetown student and she's Afro-Cuban, right? And not being accepted or looked upon from fellow Cubans who were not Afro-Cuban as being Cuban, right? And always feeling like we started, Kyla and I, you know, about good enough to sit at the table or having to prove that you can sit at the table, that you have membership, right? And I just thought it was so well done, and her inner struggles and not wanting to, afraid to claim it because she didn't want to have to prove it, or, right, it's that in between, right? What is Black?
yeah, because she was debating whether to join the dance, where the Latino club where they did the dancing, or
That's right.
the African American club, and so that struggle there, right? So
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so she decided not to join the Latino, but then later on regretted not to.
Yeah. But in the end, how, you know, graduation, how it all comes together. But it's just horrible how we deny. Yeah, we make these nice, tidy things, and then you have to fit in what we say. And why should people have to deny part of their heritage or deny who they are or pick, God forbid, pick? They're all of these things. We're all of these things. We're not one or the, anyway, it's so complex. And this book is just brilliantly, it exposes all of that on such a deep and personal level. Each of these stories has a gem that we can take. But yeah, what did you guys think of that story and her journey?
Well, I thought it was very instructive about how she handled it, and the initial confusion she had, and then her resoluteness in deciding that this is the way I'm going to be, and I'm not going to worry about what anybody else thinks of me. I was particularly struck by the the essay. Is it more than, how do you pronounce it, more than nervous?
Oh, yes.
And on a personal note, I was thinking about when does stoicism turn, when does it curdle into problems on the part of yourself and your community? Because I know as an African American man that it's lessened in later years, but there's been a particular stigma about going to a therapist or seeking therapy. And I was struck by the fact that the author decided that she wanted her two daughters to know what struggle she was going through, and to know that, mommy's not crazy or insane, and that she wanted her family to know, that the struggle she was going through when not just, she was not possessed by some sort of demon or some sort of weird eccentric malady, and that she was just like everybody else, except that she has certain problems that she's going through. So and the way she described it, from when she was in college and she was taking too many pills, and the drinking drowned out the depression for a little while, but not to the extent where she could survive. But then what really made it powerful was that she talks about her relapses, because usually when you read about 12-step programs, whether they're religious or literary or cultural, or in this case commercial, it's like, I did this and God saved me, or Jesus saved me, or Buddha saved me, and I didn't have a desire to do this anymore. She goes, well, some days I don't want to get out of bed, some days I don't want to eat, some days I relapse worse than what I should have, but I still keep going on. So I thought that was a very good essay, very eloquent in a statement about relapsing, and adamant in the fact that she was trying not to let the undertow of depression overwhelm her and her family and her children. So
Yeah, I agree. It was very hopeful. Some things I didn't know. That thing about let's see, according to the American Association of Suicidology, Latinas have had the highest rates of depressive symptoms and suicide rates in more than 30 years, but only 1 in 11 Latinas, and that's what you were saying, John, in terms of, sort of the stigma, ever seek treatment. And yeah, I do love how she is living her life openly and trying to sort of break the cycle of secret, right? I guess this is what the family called it. So there's a family history of, do you call it nervios? I don't know. How do you say?
Nervios.
Nervios. Yeah. And just, the uncle who was a policeman in New York who took his life, and just, yeah, it is really well done. I agree with you, John. Just, it really highlights the struggle of mental health issues from a cultural perspective.
Yes.
I think it's so important. And it was one of the things with this and other areas in this, that and I already shared about how I felt. You know what? I'm going to put a pin in that. Let me just say something, because I just saw the time. For those of you who are watching it, please do share any questions that you have or any comments in the chat. We'd, of course, love to hear from you. And we'll try to answer any questions or comments that you have. What I was going to say is, I did say earlier that, a way in which I saw myself reflected, and in kind of a negative way, and that I don't want to lie about that or avoid it. I think it's important that we talk about that. And if we can't acknowledge ways in which we see ourselves reflected in a negative way, we can't ever grow or do better. So, I mean, that was, and I would actually love, just as something for you guys to maybe think about. I don't know if any of the three of you had this experience at all when you were reading it, just about maybe some more negative reflections on yourself. But with this piece in particular, and not only this piece, there were also places in this, including where I saw myself reflected in the sense that I just kind of felt less alone. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to share that, like, for people who are, again, what does this book have to offer? It's, I think, depending on who you are and your background, your family background, your cultural background, your national background, all these different things that come into play, I really believe that there is all of us can see ourselves like less lonely, or our stories, like this a sense of isolation, or being an outsider, being on the outside looking in, not being acceptable, struggling with depression or suicide attempts, or alcoholism, or family problems, that to see your challenges reflected lovingly by somebody can be incredibly important. And it's not always all about I'm bad and I need to do something better. It's also seeing our challenges, or our families, or our celebrations, or our communities reflected. And for me, as a non-Latinx person, to read this book and see repeated points of connection, I thought was, first of all, really beautiful, but also really important. But I will put you back in the hot seat. Maybe just ask, how was it for you on a personal level? Does anyone want to speak on that? If you feel comfortable, you don't have to, of course.
No, like I said, I mean, to me, it was just, I was trying to look in each of the essays something that could remind me of my younger years, you know, and whether that's something that that experience with you, I felt that a certain way, but one of the things is that most of these essays were written by somebody that could. I'm not going to say most. I mean, some of these essays were written by somebody that were Afro-Latino, right? Into the experience in even the same culture. I don't have that experience, especially with the Afro-Latino culture. But as a Latino, I can say that I heard, comments, made from different, not family members, but nothing like that. But it's just from same group about different culture within the same culture, like comments about the native indigenous from either Central America or Mexico, which they're considered, they're Latinos too, but in different from the Afro Latino culture as well. What like one of the things that I think John mentioned about this article dealing with depression, I never heard anything about mental health in my life until, well, my younger life, right? That was not topic of discussion in I think John mentioned it, that what people, when they're going through some stuff, you just embrace your religion belief, right?
Mm.
And so and that is what will move you away from that struggle. So I know as a culturally, I never kind of heard anything when I was younger about that. And then it's just the struggle that, in a way, that I didn't realize that people were going even within the same culture. I do, in this job with the Office of Human Rights, I have witnessed, I've heard that people from the same culture, Hispanic culture, discriminate against people from the Latinos, and they take advantage of that because they say, well, they're not going to do this, or they're not going to complain there. So, so I'm tying that to the struggle that these writers went through in their younger life, in schools and with friends, with in-laws, that I have witnessed, heard, or just been close by when people make comments. So that's one of the things that I kind of some of the things that I kind of noticed in this essay while I was going through reading those essays, kind of trying to connect it with what I have witnessed, what I have heard, whether it was applicable in my younger years.
Oh.
I think this is what's striking about all these essays is the fact that that while they're grounded in while they are universal, they're grounded in a specific culture and a specific place and time, and that's what gives them that power, right? It's not just the author's individual literary style or the way that they can bend or restructure words, and that itself is powerful. But the fact but the fact that what really struck me about it is that these authors, if they have a universal theme, is that see us as complex human beings, which is what people in the dominant culture usually don't do. Whether they're African Americans or Latinos or Afro Latinos or people from Asian cultures, or they usually don't do that. And if they do that, it's very far in well, it's very infrequent. For instance, in that invisible essay that we were talking about, usually the authors, right? Usually they do not. The dominant culture does not usually confront itself with the possibility that, not just the possibility, that they are racist, but the fact that their silence acquiesces all manner of evil and destructive things. So that's what really struck me about this essay, these series of essays, was that they were saying that, like Zoe Neil Hurston said, we're not tragically colored, but we are human beings and we deserve to be treated as human beings. And if you don't treat us as human beings, then we will treat each other as human beings. We're not going to sit around and wait for you to treat us like human beings. So that's what I got from it.
Yeah, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah, it sort of reinforced and also taught me again that we have to be careful, right? We can't judge or know from a name, right? I mean, I'm just looking at this Khalil Haywood, the gentleman that wrote from his Afro-Latino Panamanian experience, right? But his name, Khalil Haywood, Khalil, I'm thinking, okay, there's a little bit of Arabic. Haywood, that's, and just, again, being mindful that people shouldn't have to prove, nor should people have to choose if they're blessed with a mixture of different cultures.
Mm-hmm.
They're all equally important, and you don't have, right? So how we have in this country, like boxes, black, not black, black but not Latino, right? All the different things, white, not of, right? All of these things are just painful to somebody. Like, it doesn't give you options. Like, I'm none of these things and I'm all of these things. Why should I have to pick one? And to think how traumatizing that is, every form.
Right, it's a cutoff part of yourself.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
we do have a question from a viewer, one of our absolute favorite viewers. And the question is, if there was a second volume released, what voices would you like to hear, or what issues would you like to see explored?
I would love to hear more voices from our First Nation, indigenous populations from, I mean, still talking about Central, South America, North America, right? Because Mexico's North America. And, if we're talking about from the Latin, Hispanic perspective, just, educating more, because, growing up and everybody assumes you speak Spanish, and that's not, and I'm not talking about, the Afro, because that, it was addressed in here, Afro Indigenous, Afro First Nation, but some of the other cultures that are definitely minimized and are invisible and not represented in print or commercials or TV or, even the language. And just, yeah, I'd love to hear on some of those themes. And what it feels like and what we can do better as a society, and making people less invisible or lumping. Oh, if you're from Guatemala, of course you speak Spanish, when actually, no, I don't. Or Costa Rica or whatever. Yeah. So that's my answer.
I would just say, I think I'm just going to piggyback on your answer. I would second that, because that is there's a lot of information on just what you just said, right? Because, for example, in Mexico, they have many indigenous community that some don't even speak Spanish, right? And that's the same thing from certain countries in at least central Guatemala, and another part of Honduras. I think that's it's just how their community, or how people from their community see themselves in the Hispanic community, and how their assimilation, or being forced to assimilate to a different culture within the same culture. Even you have to assimilate twice, right? You have to assimilate to your Latino culture or country of origin, and then you have to assimilate to the adopted country that is United States. So it's just that interaction between the different culture and the assimilations that they have to do.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time. John, did you have anything to add about this, or about the collection generally, to close us out?
Yes, to add to what Renee said about the book, I would encourage everyone to read it. It's not an easy read, but it's a necessary one, and you'll find out a lot about other cultures and about yourself. Number one. Number two, I think that it's very instructive that that we not trivialize other cultures. For instance, it's all well and good to be inclusive, but some of the best essays are talking about what it means to be the full human scope of a person. So, in other words, I think that I think that people will be free when they can see the worst that's in the person who is from another culture or from another ethnic background, and they go, well, they're not representative of everybody. They are part of a culture, and they are individuals, and that's what. And I guess in a ramming roundabout fashion, that's what needs to be done. To recognize, as you said earlier, Kyla, that and Renee, that you don't have to be the world's best person to be treated as a human being. You deserve all the privileges of being a human being, no matter who you are and where you come from.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So it is that time where we have very quickly, it always seems to go very fast. We have come to the end of the hour for the Elephant We Don't See Diversity Dialogue for September. I do want to let those of you watching at home know of a couple of things that we have coming up. We do have another Hispanic Heritage Month event coming up. We have several that we're partnering with the library. There's a book group coming up. And I invite you to go to pgcmls.info/events to look at some of those. And on October 12th, the Office of Human Rights is holding a Celebrating Latino Achievement event, which we'll be doing. And you can come to our website, which I'm hoping is going to put up, but I'll try to do from memory. You can go to civilrights.mypgc.us to learn more about what we've got coming up. And the registration link for that event on October 12th will come soon. And the other thing I want to let you know is that our diversity dialogue for October is going to actually be a lead-in for Native American Heritage Month. And we are going to be looking at Not a Nation of Immigrants. And so we're really excited about that too. And we hope that you can come back and join us. I do want to thank for doing all the hard work behind the scenes, being the wonderful library tech person, thank you so much. And to John from the library for being willing to step in and join us. It was so wonderful to have you here and to hear your voice and to just join and learn from you in this discussion. And of course, Renee and Jose, thank you so much. And everybody at home, we love that you tune in and you engage with us and send us emails and read these books and grow and learn along with us. You are the reason that we do all of this. So on behalf of the Office of Human Rights and the library, thank you so much, everybody, and good night. Good night.
Good night.